My HOA Karen tried to kick me out of the home I owned free and clear. No mortgage, no late payments, nothing. Picture this. It's barely 6:30 in the morning, sky still gray. I'm standing in my doorway with bed hair and coffee breath, and she's marching up my walkway in spotless sneakers and a blazer that looks like it came with a podium. She sticks a 30-day vacate notice in my hand like she's a judge and I'm on some TV show. Be a sweetheart and read the bolded parts, she says, tapping the paper with those clear acrylic nails. Then she turns on her heel and struts back to a pearl white SUV, the kind you buy when you want strangers to know you're winning at life. She really thought I'd pack a bag and roll over. She had no idea I'd been quietly documenting every stunt, every bogus ticket, every whoopsie they tried to slip by me. She had no idea that when we finally got to court, the judge was going to say one sentence that would make the whole room go dead quiet. But I'm getting ahead of myself, real quick. Tell me where you're watching from and hit me with your worst HOA story in the comments. If you've ever had some clipboard tyrant try to turn your neighborhood into a fiefdom, this one's for you. Smash that like button so YouTube actually shows this to folks who need it. Tap subscribe, ring the bell, because I'm about to lay out the receipts, the setup, and the moment the whole scheme blew up in her face. You're gonna want to hear every beat of this, trust me. My name is Mason Blake. I'm 46, an industrial electrician, and I finally did the thing my dad used to call a small miracle. I bought a beat-up 1974 ranch in Pine Valley Oaks with cash. Not fancy. Good bones, creaky hallway, a yard that needed love. The kind of house that smells like coffee and sawdust, and the cinnamon my neighbor Mrs. Patel puts in everything. First couple of years were quiet, Saturdays on the porch, helping Kenny across the street fix the saggy hinge on his garage, swapping lawnmower parts with old man DeLuca, who tells you a story for every screw he hands you. I was the guy wiring the school boiler room at 2 a.m. when everyone else was asleep, then coming home, showering, and crashing on the couch next to my old dog Ranger with the fan humming. Simple. Good. Then Tracy happened. Tracy Whitfield. Trim, blonde, always carrying a folder, always using your first name like she's selling you something. She slid into the HOA board at a special election nobody knew about because it was held on a Tuesday at 11 a.m., while most folks were at work. 2 meetings later, she's president, smiling like she just won Miss Suburbia. I remember the first time I talked to her one-on-one. She gave me that smile, 2 parts teeth, 1 part threat, and said, "Mason, I'm so excited to bring order back to Pine Valley." Order. That word landed like a chill. It started with a courtesy notice about my fence. The same cedar slat fence that came with my house. Older than disco. Orange paper flapping on my door. Non-compliant fence materials. Remove or replace. $300 fine per month. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous, it tripped the part of my brain that just short circuits. I knocked on Tracy's door. She opened with the same smile. "Architectural committee updated our standard," she chirped. "Cedar slats are antiquated." I said, "Antiquated or not, this fence was here when the original covenants were signed. It's grandfathered in," she blinked slowly, like a lizard. "Not under the new standards." I asked for the clause. She said it was implied. That word again. I walked away trying not to say something I couldn't unsay. That night I drove to county records. If you've never been, it's a museum for paper. Dusty ledgers, stapled packets, the smell of old ink and boredom. A clerk with glasses on a lanyard wheeled out a cart and I dug through binders until my fingers turned black. When I found our original covenants, yellowed, notarized, read by maybe 6 people in the last 20 years, I almost whooped. There it was. Anything predating the standards is grandfathered in unless it's a hazard. Plain as day, I made copies. Then I made copies of the copies. You don't work around electricity for 20+ years without learning a thing about redundancy. The next HOA meeting was standing room only because rumor moves faster than email. I brought my copies and raised my hand. Tracy tried to move on. I read the clause out loud. People started whispering. You could feel the room shift, like when a breaker flips and the lights stutter. Tracy leaned into the mic, syrupy sweet. "Those documents are out of date," she said. "We modernized the standards." I said, "Cool, show us the vote and the filing." She smiled and announced there was a $50 copying fee if I wanted to review the bylaws. I peeled 320s from my wallet and slid them across the table. She knocked her coffee over my papers with a chirpy, "Oh no," and dabbed at them like she was auditioning for community theater. Folks gasped. I smiled because I had fresh copies in the truck and a phone recording in my pocket. It wasn't about the fence anymore. Within a week, I had 2 more notices. One for visual clutter because I had a garden gnome older than me. One for miscellaneous obstruction because Ranger's water bowl sat by the porch steps. The mail started looking like traffic cones. Then came the ticket on my work van. Bright yellow, like the color of petty. Commercial vehicle, overnight parking. Violation, $200. Same van, same driveway, 2 years. The kicker was the boot on my front tire. In my own driveway. Someone had called a private company and slapped a hunk of metal on my wheel like they owned my concrete. I took pictures from every angle and called down to the sheriff's office. Sergeant Dempsey showed up, took one look, put his hands on his hips, and did that little breath laugh people do when they're trying to stay professional. "On private property," he said. "Yeah, no." He made the contractor pop it off or ride downtown. The contractor popped it off like it was on fire. Dempsey pulled me aside and said, "Read your state code. Licensed trade vehicles parked on your lot are protected. Keep a copy in your glove box." I did him one better. I laminated the law and taped it inside my garage. That's when the big envelope landed on my doormat at 3 in the morning. I know the time because Ranger barked like a stranger had danced on the porch. Heavy cardstock, the kind that tries too hard. Inside, a depreciation assessment from a community valuator named Colin Whitfield. Same last name as Tracy. I Googled him and found a LinkedIn with 3 job titles and 0 licenses. His letter said my aging structure was dragging down neighborhood values and suggested a stabilizing fee to be paid to the HOA, or, alternatively, a cash purchase arrangement for my home through Silverline Realty. Guess who owns Silverline Realty? If you guessed a guy who shares a Thanksgiving table with Tracy, ring the bell and collect your prize. I brought the letter to an attorney I trust, Renee Alvarez. Renee is 5'3" and speaks like a sledgehammer wrapped in velvet. She flipped through the pages, hummed a little, and then laughed. A real, from the belly laugh that made the blinds vibrate. "We're not even in the ballpark of legal," she said. She sent a real appraiser who walked my place, measured the updates I'd done, new wiring, breaker panel up to code, kitchen outlets finally not trying to start a fire, and came back with numbers that made me sit down. Turns out my stubborn little ranch raised values on our block. Imagine that. Fixing things makes them better. Meanwhile, Renee dug into filings and found a matryoshka doll of companies. Evergreen Maintenance billing us for landscaping, like we live at the Biltmore Summit Security Consulting, doing risk audits for a neighborhood whose wildest scandal used to be a raccoon in a trash bin, and all these payments doing a pretty little circle back to, ta-da, Silverline Realty. Money going round and round like a kiddie ride nobody wants a ticket for. It didn't stop. A petition started circulating saying I was unstable and a safety concern. I got sent screenshots. 13 signatures at first, then 17, then 22. Folks I waved to every morning. Kenny, who borrowed my drill. Yvonne, who used to bring me extra brownies from church bake sales. Their names in shaky cursive under language I could tell wasn't theirs. The worst part wasn't anger. It was the pit in my stomach that comes from being called crazy. Takes you right back to being a kid on the bus, hands clammy, trying not to cry. I started doing laps around the block at night with Ranger, not because I wanted the exercise, but because motion made my brain quieter. I'd pass Tracy's house and see the patio lights on, like an interrogation room, and feel that little spark behind my ribs. Anger, sure, but also something sharper. Resolve, you can push me, you can lie about me, but you don't get to steal my home. A week later, an anonymous complaint landed on the state licensing board's desk, saying I cut corners, padded hours, endangered patients at the hospital. My license was suspended pending review. Just like that, my paycheck paused. Panic feels like electricity when it rushes up your spine. You can taste metal. I called everyone I'd ever worked for. Hospital supervisors wrote letters. The chief engineer sent in security footage from the night the complaint claimed I'd been on site. Footage of me at my house eating leftover pizza. It took 2 weeks to clear. 2 weeks of watching my savings account like it was an hourglass with a crack. 2 weeks of waking up at 3 a.m. and staring at the ceiling while rangers snored. I'd go outside and find little reminders that someone wanted me rattled. A dent in my mailbox that hadn't been there the night before. Trash neatly tucked under my truck. 4 little slashes in 4 sidewalls of 4 tires one Sunday morning like a signature. Dempsey did what he could, but unless a camera caught a face, it was all smoke. That's when I put in the cameras. Not those cheap little things that blink like Christmas ornaments. Real ones. Hardwired. Motion sensing. Night vision. I tucked them under the eaves, disguised one in the birdhouse, and stuck one behind a vent grill aimed at the side gate. That same week, my basement turned into a kiddie pool. I came home from a job search meeting to the sound of water. Wading through it in my work boots, I followed the trickle back to the outdoor spigot, which was cranked full open with a hose fed through a cracked basement window. The camera got it all, a figure in a hoodie. But the walk, oh man, the walk. Everyone's got a signature. Tracy's left foot turns out just a tiny bit, like she learned to walk in heels and never unlearned it. The grainy footage showed that turn like a neon sign. Renee copied the video to 3 drives and stored one at her office. "We're building a case," she said. "Let them keep writing it for us." When the HOA sent the eviction notice, 30 days to vacate for repeated noncompliance, I felt something snap into place. Fear had been sitting on my chest like a damn anvil for weeks. Suddenly it stood up. My hands stopped shaking. I read the notice front to back twice. Most of it was a salad of words that sounded official but weren't. Elsewhere in the packet, an amicable resolution if I sold immediately to Silverline Realty for a number that would have barely covered my tax bill and a new water heater. Sign the NDA, they said, and move on to fresh opportunities. Renee looked at me and I could tell she was done playing nice. "We're beyond civil," she said. "This is fraud. And if we map the vendors and show the pattern across other HOAs, we're talking racketeering." She called a friend at the state attorney general's office named Elliot Zhang. Elliot brought in a forensic accountant named Priya, who turned my dining table into a CSI lab for spreadsheets, colored lines, arrows, circles. Every time a line looped back to Tracy's orbit, Priya would hum. By the end of the week, she'd built a spider web you could see from across the room. "This isn't sloppy," she said. "It's confident." Confident is a nice word for arrogant. We decided to set a trap. Not because I'm some chess master, because bullies are most themselves when they think they're winning. We scheduled a peace meeting at the community center. The email went out like it was a kumbaya picnic. We told folks there'd be coffee, cookies, and a chance to reset our neighborhood values. Tracy replied, all with a little heart emoji. Cute. Meanwhile, Elliot coordinated with folks who have badges and quiet shoes. A local reporter named Tessa Monroe, who does that investigative series where she says what everyone is thinking out loud, asked if she could document a community dialogue. We said, absolutely. I practiced looking defeated. I let my shoulders droop. I let my face go soft. There's power in playing small when you know what you're about to do. The night before the meeting, I slept like a rock. Woke up with that calm I get right before I fix a nasty short. You know the job is ugly, but you also know the exact breaker to flip and the exact panel to open and the exact wire to replace. You've got the right tools and you know where the heat is going to come from. That's what it felt like. I put on an old jacket with scuffed elbows and drove to the center with Ranger's fur still stuck to the seatbelt. Tessa's crew was setting up lights like it was prom. Elliot and Renee sat near the back, quiet. I was the last one to walk in before Tracy. When she arrived, she floated. Some people walk, she floats, hugging folks, doing cheek kisses like we're in a show. She went straight to the microphone and did her pageant voice. Neighbors, she said, we've had misunderstandings. We've had regrettable choices. She looked at me. Mason and I have agreed on a path forward that protects property values and community standards. People actually clapped, because people want to believe a thing can be over without a fight. I don't blame them. Peace is heavy when you're carrying worry every day. She turned to me. Would you like to say a few words, Mason? I stood. My hands looked steady. Inside, I felt like a drum. I pulled the folded paper from my jacket and cleared my throat. "You're right," I said, voice low. "It's time to resolve this." The silence that fell had a texture, like velvet over a table. "Tracy Whitfield," I continued, "you are hereby served with a subpoena to appear before a grand jury investigating wire fraud, mail fraud, and racketeering in connection with your management of the Pine Valley Oaks Homeowners Association and related entities." I could feel the energy shift like a fuse blowing. Tessa's camera went zoom zoom. Phones came up everywhere, little rectangles catching the moment like fireflies. Elliot stood and two other folks did too. Men and women in simple suits with expressions that don't move. Tracy laughed, the kind that's all throat and no breath. "He's harassing me," she said, trying to talk over the room. "He's angry because he won't follow rules." Elliot rolled a cart to the projector. Priya's map went up on the screen. Arrows, company names, dates, payments that left our HOA account and returned as consulting fees to Silverline. Side-by-side emails with Tracy's personal account, sending instructions to vendors. Tessa read aloud one line that tasted like rust. "Make him miserable until he sells. Use compliance pressure. We need that corner lot." The room made a sound I've never heard grown adults make in unison. Shock has a sound. It's a breath pulled through teeth. Tracy tried to squeeze a sentence through her smile. "This is defamatory and..." One of the quiet shoes folks stepped forward and said, "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." It didn't look like TV. No one shouted. No one did a big dramatic thing. She stepped back, bumped the stage table, made the water cups shake, then found herself bracketed. As they walked her toward the side door, she turned, scanning faces for a friendly one. Kenny stared at the floor. Yvonne clutched her purse like it was a seatbelt. Old man DeLuca, who'd once defended the nice lady who works so hard, looked like a kid who just saw Santa take off his beard. I felt bad for them. I did. Watching someone you trusted get unmasked isn't fun, but I also felt something unclench in my chest for the first time in months. I could breathe all the way down. You think it ends there, but court is its own marathon. There were motions and hearings and that terrible waiting where you live normal life with a little thread tied to the courthouse door. My license came off suspension with a letter of apology that felt like a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. The hospital bumped my rate in recognition of your cooperation and integrity. I gave Ranger a steak dinner he didn't finish because he fell asleep face first in it. The HOA's bank accounts were frozen. A third-party auditor went through our books like a beachcomber, finding treasure. Well, not treasure exactly. 5-figure payments to Evergreen for winter services. In a month we had no snow. Security audits from Summit for nights when the guard log showed no one on site. Reimbursements to Tracy for office supplies that looked suspiciously like the stationery her boutique sells on the side. Each time a line item landed on a screen, I'd feel that little zing behind the ribs again. Anger, but also the relief of being right. Tracy's lawyer, shiny cuffs and a watch that could blind a guy, filed a defamation suit against me for $500,000. Renee responded with a motion to dismiss that might as well have been titled, "Stop Wasting the Court's Time." The judge scheduled a hearing, and I'll never forget stepping into that courtroom. Cold air, the echo of shoes, the quiet rustle of paper that means things are about to happen. Tracy sat with her team, hair still perfect, smile stapled on. I sat with Renee, who wore flats and an expression like a surgeon right before an incision. Tessa was there too, in the back, pen flying. Neighbors sprinkled the benches, some supportive, some there for the spectacle, some probably wondering if they'd end up on TV. The judge was one of those no-nonsense types who looks over his glasses like a "let's not do this" guy. He listened to both sides, he read the filings. Then he leaned back, took a breath, and delivered the sentence that made the whole room forget to blink. "In 30 years on this bench," he said, "I have seen homeowners associations act foolishly, even cruelly. But I rarely see one run like a private ATM." The clerk stopped typing for a second. Tracy's lawyer's smile fell off his face like it was heavy. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Blake, you are not a perfect man. None of us are. But the record in front of me shows a pattern of intimidation and bad faith governance aimed at forcing you out of your home." He turned to Tracy. "Ms. Whitfield, the arrogance in these communications is astonishing. He ordered restitution to the HOA, barred her from any role in any HOA for life, referred the criminal parts to a higher court, and dismissed her defamation suit with prejudice so hard it left a dent. I walked out of there into a parking lot that suddenly smelled like summer, even though it was October. The sky looked like it had been washed. Renee hugged me, then immediately did that thing where she tells me not to get cocky because we still had civil pieces and audits and cleanup. I nodded and bought her coffee anyway. Tessa stuck a mic under my chin and asked what I wanted to say to anyone watching at home who's stuck in a similar mess. I said, document everything. Build allies. Don't let scare tactics make you sell what you love. Later, watching that clip online, I thought I sounded steadier than I'd felt. Sometimes courage looks like not falling apart on camera. Back in Pine Valley Oaks, the mood shifted. We had a recall, a real one this time. Ballots counted in the clubhouse with 3 people from outside the neighborhood acting as monitors so nobody could cry foul. A retired school secretary named Dana Morris, woman with a spiral notebook and a stare that makes you sit up straight, won by a landslide. She posted our financials online within a week. She canceled a half-dozen nonsense contracts. Our dues dropped. She started meetings with a 5-minute good news only segment, kids' graduations, a neighbor's cancer scan coming back clean, old man DeLuca's tomato taking 3rd place at the county fair, stuff that reminded us we were people before we were parcels. Neighbors who'd signed the petition came by one. Some brought cookies, some brought stammering apologies. Yvonne cried on my porch so hard Ranger leaned his whole head against her knee. Kenny handed me the $20 bill I'd lent him for gas months ago, as if that even mattered anymore, and said, I was scared, man. I told him I was too. That's the truth of it. Fear makes you do dumb things. Fear loves a strong voice, even when that voice is wrong. What matters is what you do when the curtain drops and you see the person behind it is just a neighbor with a laptop and a lust for control. We fixed stupid things that had been broken on purpose. The front gate had been out for parts for 6 months. Dana found the part in a storage closet labeled seasonal decor. The clubhouse AC had timing issues. Turned out someone set it to run only during board meetings. We returned security golf carts that no one actually used. We turned the 10th no parking sign into a community board where folks post babysitting gigs, lost cats, yard sales, and once memorably, a poem a 3rd grader wrote about rain that made half the neighborhood teary. On Fridays in the summer, we do movie nights in the cul-de-sac. One night we watched a documentary about some famous fraud case, and everybody kept side-eyeing me like, too soon. I laughed hard enough to scare a squirrel out of the oak tree. One afternoon, a state rep came by for lemonade at the clubhouse. Donna had invited her, and I guess Tessa's story had made some noise. We told her what we'd been through. We showed her Priya's map, minus the private details. The rep took notes and said, you just wrote my bill. A few months later, there it was. A homeowner fairness proposal with simple stuff that should have been obvious. Real appeals, proof before fines, transparent voting, penalties for record tampering and self-dealing. It won't fix every jerk with a title, but it'll make the next Tracy's job a little harder. Sometimes that's all you can do. Make the next person's fight shorter. There are quiet moments I didn't expect. The mornings now, the porch feels like mine again. I drink coffee and Ranger sniffs the same spot he sniffed for 10 years like it always smells brand new. Mrs. Patel waves a measuring cup at me from her kitchen because her recipes are basically a handshake agreement between tradition and chaos. The mail doesn't give me stomach aches anymore. The rumor mill broke down and nobody missed the noise. The cement scuff near the basement window where water flooded in. I haven't painted over it. It's my reminder that damage isn't the end of a story. The fix is part of it. I know there are folks watching this who are in that awful middle place. Your face is hot. Your chest is tight. You feel like maybe you're the problem because someone with a laminated badge keeps telling you that you are. Hear me. You are allowed to stand up without being perfect. You are allowed to protect your home without being a lawyer. Start small. Document. Ask for records in writing. If they spill coffee on your papers, make it part of the record. If they slap a boot on your van in your own driveway, call the sheriff and learn your state code. Put up cameras if you can. Get your neighbors talking like humans again. Bake a tray of something. Share tools. Stitch up that social fabric that fear tried to tear. And if you find the money trail, and too often there is one, don't be a hero. Get help. Call the AG. Find a reporter like Tessa or a lawyer like Renee. There are good people who wake up every morning itching to do the right thing if you hand them the right file. As for Tracy, I don't celebrate other people's falls. Not publicly. In private, I will admit there were days I imagined making a victory speech on my front lawn that would have been real ugly if it had made it to the internet. But when the sentence came down, restitution, ban, referrals, I didn't feel giddy. I felt tired and clean. Like after a long job when you scrub your hands for the third time, and there's finally no grease under the nails. I felt like my house knew I'd kept a promise I made to myself when I was 9, and my dad was losing our place because of a layoff. I swore I'd never let someone take my home without a fight. You write these little vows to your future self when you're a kid, and if you're lucky, your grown-up hands get to keep them. I got messages after Tessa's series aired, dozens, then hundreds. People from Arizona, Ohio, Florida, Massachusetts, nurses, truckers, teachers, baristas, a guy who repairs pianos for a living and told me his HOA fined him for excessive practicing, even though he plays at a church 2 towns over. They all thought they were alone. They're not. You aren't either. Bullies survive on silence and embarrassment. The second you realize your shame is actually their business model, things start to change. We do a neighborhood potluck now every second Saturday. I bring deviled eggs that get eaten so fast I've stopped trying to make them pretty. Someone sets up cornhole. Old man DeLuca tells terrible jokes and then laughs at his own punchlines in a way that makes them land. Kids ride bikes in a loose, loud pack. The sun goes down slow and neighbors stay. Sometimes we talk about the bad year, and sometimes we don't. There's a relief in both. That first night, Dana raised a paper cup and said, "To boring HOAs." Everybody cheered. Boring governance is heaven. Give me paint colors and mailbox heights debates over subpoena season any day. There's one last thing I want to say, and it's about the little tells. You know how I knew we were going to win? It wasn't the subpoena or the projector or the camera flash. It was the look people had in that meeting room when the truth finally got a microphone. Heads tilted, shoulders dropped, phones lowered. It's like the whole room decided to breathe on purpose. Power can make a person tall for a while, but truth levels the floor. The playing field stops slanting. The Karen in the blazer stops looking like a principal and starts looking like a person who made a choice. And the neighborhood, those of us who were always just trying to grill a burger on a Sunday and not get fined for the smell, gets to be a neighborhood again. So if you're still here, if this hit a nerve, drop a comment with your city and your wildest HOA story. I answer a bunch of them, and the ones I don't, someone in the comments will, because that's how this works. Hit like so the algorithm doesn't bury this. Tap subscribe and ring the bell if you want updates. I'm planning a follow-up on what our new bylaws look like and how we set up a budget that doesn't bleed. And send this to that friend who keeps saying, maybe I should just sell. Sometimes the difference between losing and keeping your home is a copy of the covenants, a neighbor with a camera, and the nerve to keep showing up. I'm Mason. I still live in my creaky little ranch with Ranger's hair in places I'll be finding for the rest of my life. I still fix broken circuits at 2 a.m. and drink more coffee than my doctor likes. And every time I walk past the dining table, I see that spiderweb map Priya drew in my head, all those lines that used to make me dizzy. Now the lines are gone. Now it's just a table, quiet and clean, with a bowl of lemons in the middle, Mrs. Patel swears we'll keep the house light. I don't know about light, but I know this. The house feels like a house again. My street feels like a street again. And order, the way Tracy meant it, has been replaced by something better, belonging. That's the thing she never understood. We didn't need a queen. We needed a neighborhood. And we built one, the old-fashioned way, together.